Archery is all about consistency. The information provided in this video series is not the only way of doing things, but it has proven successful for me and many other archers. Bow Only's mission is to give you information so that you can be the best shooter that you strive to be. In this video, I'm going to show you one way to shoot a thumb button with back tension. If you have watched our Learn Archery, the process, how to learn how to shoot back tension video, you would know that back tension is not a type of release, but how you activate the release to fire your bow. The goal of back tension is to transfer the hold of the bow into those bigger muscles within your back to hold steadier, execute a cleaner shot, and have a complete surprise release. Even though a thumb button release still has a trigger to fire it, we can still use back tension to trigger a surprise shot as long as we have a high quality release with no trigger travel in the trigger. Thankfully, most of the high-end thumb button releases out there come with little to no trigger travel in the release aid right out of the package. But if yours doesn't, I'd recommend eliminating all of the movement out of the trigger that you possibly can. Again, I know I say it a lot, but archery is all about consistency, and the more things we can do exactly the same every single time, the more accurate we're going to shoot. This doesn't mean that there's only one way of doing things, but having that trigger have no movement makes it so much easier to be more consistent in your shot. Be sure to follow the guidelines for adjusting the trigger travel on your handheld release so you don't accidentally have a misfire. For most people that want to learn how to shoot a thumb button with back tension, it's easier to learn on a heavier trigger. A lighter trigger can make it harder to learn the process to fire the release because you'll be more apt to punching that trigger and commanding the shot. Lastly, we have to adjust the trigger position on the release. It's all personal preference, but as a general rule, we'll have more control having that trigger in the crease of our thumb rather than the tip of our thumb, as it will give us more control and make it easier to repeat and be consistent. Once you have the trigger travel eliminated and the thumb button is in the correct position for your hand, you have to ensure that you have a consistent and repeatable anchor point. Be sure to watch the how-to anchor with a handheld release aid to refine this process. Before I show you this, I highly encourage you to go back and watch our Learn Archery, the process, how to shoot with back tension, so that you can figure out how to learn this process and get it down, because this is not something that you can just walk up to a target and start shooting at. It takes a lot of time to learn, and you have to follow the process in order to learn it. There are a lot of different ways to trigger your thumb button release with back tension, and none of them are necessarily right or wrong. It's all what works for you. But in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I trigger my thumb button release, because this is what I have found to be most consistent, most repeatable, and the easiest to learn. First off, I set the release in the very middle of the center pads on my fingers. If I set it too deep, this will keep the natural rotation from occurring. Before I draw back, I keep my fingers hooked and rigid around the release, keeping the tension in my hand almost like I'm making a fist, but not quite to that extent. I keep the tension in my hand throughout the entire draw, and as I pull into anchor, at the same time I pull into anchor, I slowly put my thumb right on the thumb peg of the release, and I wrap my thumb on that trigger. That way that trigger cannot slide against my thumb. I want it to be locked in so that that trigger is pulled into my thumb like a wall, so I can get a smooth, consistent, and repeatable release. Again, that thumb is rigid because when I stretch out my hand, right, that trigger is going to be pulled right into my thumb, which is stiff, rigid, acting like a wall. Also, notice how my thumb sits on the inside towards the palm of my hand when I draw to keep from triggering the release. As I slowly pull my release arm elbow straight back and away from the target, I keep my thumb locked on that thumb barrel, and I slowly stretch out my hand just like this. Notice my fingers stay rigid, and my hand has the natural relaxation during the shot. And because of that relaxation, if you look at it this way, I'll hold my thumb just below it. When I stretch out my hand, it pulls that thumb trigger right into my thumb, right? But my fingers are still completely rigid and in control of the release. My fingers are not sliding on the release. I'm not relaxing my fingers. I'm keeping my fingers rigid, and I'm stretching out my hand. My fingers on the release don't slide and relax, and my thumb does not slide against the barrel of the release. My fingers are stiff and rigid, and my thumb is set against the thumb barrel. We don't want our thumb barrel to slide against our thumb, and we don't want our fingers to slide and slip and relax out of the release. We want that to stay rigid. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you how the thumb barrel moves into my thumb while my thumb is off of the trigger so you can see the movement. As I stretch out my hand, a natural rotation of the release occurs. There is a transfer of pressure from my fingers around the actual handle of the release into my thumb from the thumb peg as that natural relaxation and stretch of the hand causes that natural rotation to occur. You can see it when I keep my hand tense, set my thumb, I'll keep my thumb off so you can see, and I slowly stretch it. See how that trigger is pulled right into my thumb? Now I'm not relaxing my fingers, right? I'm keeping my fingers set and I'm relaxing and stretching my hand. When I stretch out my hand, you can see the natural rotation that occurs. This should first be practiced extensively on a string, as it takes a lot of practice and a lot of repetition to get this movement down. After practicing a lot on the string, you should know how much preload you actually need on that trigger before you go into activating that shot and stretching out that hand to get that natural rotation to fire the shot. Be sure to follow the process from the Learn Archery, how to learn how to shoot back tension video. You can't just take this to a target and start shooting right away. It's not gonna work. It takes a lot of time and it's a commitment to learn, but I promise you that it's worth it. Here are a few key things to remember when learning how to shoot back tension with the thumb button release under this method. The placement of your fingers on the release have to be consistent. Once they are set, do not relax or slide your fingers on the release. They are hooked around the release and are rigid. Your fingers aren't relaxing during the shot. Your hand is stretching and lengthening out as your fingers and thumb remain rigid around the release. Do not allow the thumb barrel to slide on your thumb. Your thumb must be locked and rigid around the thumb barrel. Keep the release arm elbow pulling straight back to keep the tension against your back wall and to keep from coming out of the valley of your bow. Remember to always stare at what you want to hit, not your pin. You should look through your pin at what you want to hit. Your follow through should be your bow hand going straight towards the target while your release hand comes directly over the top of your release arm shoulder. If you have any questions, please leave a comment on this video or message us on our Bow Only Instagram or Facebook page, or find us on our contact option on our website at bowonlyoutdoors.com. I'm Josh Flaster with Bow Only Outdoors. Thanks for watching.